In the current political climate, what constitutes ethical journalism has been put under intense scrutiny. With the rise of fake news and increasingly polarizing issues being reported on, it is important to take a step back and recognize what makes an ethical and fair piece of journalism. Communication is drastically different from what it was a century ago. In a quote from Wired magazine, the changes in communication and the consequences of those changes are described. In the 21st century, the capacity to spread ideas and reach an audience is no longer limited by access to expensive, centralized broadcasting infrastructure. It's limited instead by one's ability to garner and distribute attention. And right now, the flow of the world's attention is structured, to a vast and overwhelming degree, by just a few digital platforms. These are Facebook, Google, and to a lesser extent, Twitter. These companies, which love to hold themselves up as monuments of free expression, have attained a scale unlike anything in the world has ever seen. They've come to dominate media distribution, and they increasingly stand in for the public sphere itself. But at their core, their business is mundane. They are ad brokers. To virtually anyone who wants to pay them, they sell the capacity to precisely target our eyeballs. They use massive surveillance of our behavior, online and off, to generate increasingly accurate, automated predictions of what advertisements we are most susceptible to, and what content will keep us clicking, tapping, and scrolling down a bottomless feed. So what exactly is fake news? Fake news is defined by the Cambridge Dictionary as false stories that appear to be news, which are spread on the internet or using other media and are usually created to influence other people's political views or as a joke. The difference between fake news and other kinds of false news, like misreporting, is that fake news is created with the intention of misleading the viewer. Fake news has had a very real-world impact, like when, in the final 3 months of the U.S. presidential campaign, the top-performing fake election news stories on Facebook generated more engagement than the top stories from major news outlets such as the New York Times, the Washington Post, or the Huffington Post. During these critical months of the campaign, 20 top-performing false election stories from hoax sites and hyper-partisan blogs generated over 8 million shares, reactions, and comments on Facebook. In order to keep bias out of their reporting and avoid creating fake news, journalists have a method of decision-making called a Potter box at their disposal. A Potter box is a model created by Professor Ralph B. Potter, Jr. that is used to make decisions in an ethical way. The Potter box provides a framework for analyzing a situation, separating facts from opinions, and taking into account those individuals affected by a given ethical issue. In order to use a Potter box, one must first define all the facts in a specific situation. Second, the values in operation that cause a situation must be identified. Third, one must select a moral principle that they believe in to apply to that situation. Lastly, what one's loyalties are and why they exist should be reflected on and understood. If a person is able to understand each of these steps, then they should be able to make an ethical decision. Spotting fake news can be tough, but there are ways to stop yourself from being tricked. Michael Caulfield from the Washington State University in Vancouver created a course of action for students to spot fake news called 4 Moves. The first of the 4 moves is to check for previous work, which involves checking to see if anyone has already fact-checked the source. Second is to go upstream to the source, meaning that the authenticity and trustworthiness of the creator should be examined. Third is to read laterally, which is to read about what other people say about the source of the claim. Lastly is to circle back, which simply means to not be afraid to retrace your steps and start over if you hit any dead ends or become confused. With these strategies in mind, hopefully you are better equipped to deal with fake news in the future.